All right, hey everybody. So welcome to PBR Monday, Friday afternoon edition. We are. I'm going to be gone this Monday, actually doing some Tour of Idaho trail work up near North Fork. We're gonna Brian DeLinge and Mike Evans and I. Brian DeLinge, of course, is the IDPR, Idaho Department of Parks and Recs trail ranger for the eastern part of the state. And Mike Evans is the principal behind the Idaho Single Track Association. And we're three old farts, and we go out and we clear a lot of trail. Well, Brian's not, but Mike and I are. So, and the trail that we're working on Monday is Tour of Idaho Trail. So hopefully we'll have this thing all marked. It'll be good to go, and you guys will be able to be some of the first beneficiaries of another brand new trail this year. So, because I'm going to be out, I'll be probably, hopefully, driving back Monday night when PBR Monday is normally scheduled. So I'm going to record it today, and then we'll schedule it for, it won't be a live video, but the video will be made available Monday evening at 7 p.m., same as usual. So the only difference is there won't be any interaction on this video. But nonetheless, same kind of a deal. So I left off last week. We were starting to talk about day 6. I'm going to talk about day 6, day 7, and hopefully day 8 today in the next hour or so. One thing that I'm going to do is when we're done with all this, I anticipate next week, day 9 and day 10 will go pretty quickly. Day 9 I have to talk about a little bit, but day 10 is pretty simple, so there won't be a lot to talk about there. After that, I want to go back and I want to go through all the challenge points and talk about where they're located for this year, why I chose to locate them there. Challenge points are just designed to be kind of an extra fun feature. There's nothing intrinsically special about a challenge point because you roll right over all of them. Very few of them involve doing anything other than just riding the trail. So I want to talk a little bit about what's behind the challenge points. That was a user-demanded feature of the tour, by the way. We kind of did something like that one year. People really liked it, so we kept it. So we'll talk about that a little bit next week. The 2020 challenge points, where they are, why they're there, what the whole theory is behind the challenge points. And then if you have any questions about things that I haven't covered so far, be sure to log into either this week, you can ask them in your comments, or the next week you can ask them in your comments, and I'll be more than glad to answer questions about the 2020 route. After I'm done with the 2020 route, I'm going to jump back into bike prep and maybe a little bit more on navigation before the tour dates come up upon us, which is a couple months away if things rock and roll the way they should. But anyway, so let's start today by talking about day 6. And I want to pull up the day 6 map here. Before I do, let's just talk about the single track trails that you'll encounter on day 6. Butcher Knife Ridge, one of the best single track trails in the state, I think. Super easy. Last year when I was up there, I ran into the fellow that runs cows in that area of the world. Really nice guy, and he's up there with his little girl who is a first grader, I think. She's wearing a set of pink cowboy boots. She's on a little XR 100R with a rifle strapped to her back. It's awesome. Love talking to the guy. But they ride out across there a lot to check on their cows. So if you run into a guy that looks like a rancher and a little girl on an XR 100 with pink cowboy boots, make sure you stop and say hello because they're super nice people. Divide Trail, you're going to spend a lot of time on that. Another superb trail that's in the area. A little bit of side hilling in some places, a couple steep ups and downs, but basically not very much of a technical trail and a really fun trail. There's something called 3 Mile Ridge. That's something that we cut out just about a year or so ago. It's relatively new. It's a trail that's existed for a long time, but it just fell into disuse. It's a beautiful trail now. Sheep Creek, Silver Leaves Ridge, Stein Mountain, and there's a trail that's not in the list here that I'll put in soon. It's the Powder Gulch Trail, which is the one that we're going to cut out. These are all wonderful trails. Day 6 was created basically for last year's tour just because we uncovered so many wonderful trails up in the North Fork area, which is north of Salmon, Idaho, that had fallen into disuse over the years, or in the case of Powder Gulch, I'm convinced never actually really existed. And when we discovered these trails, we said, look, these are some of the best trails anywhere. The reason I ride dirt bikes in the wood are these trails that are in this area. They're wonderful trails. Most of them are not overly difficult or overly technical. You can make good time on them. The views are stupendous. They're fast, flowy trails that are just a ton of fun. So I think you're really going to enjoy day 6. And as I mentioned last week, in sort of my preparatory comments to talk about this week, we encourage you, it's allowed in the rules, and we encourage you to get to North Fork, Idaho by whatever route you're taking. The solo route, the 2-team route, and the 3-team route are all slightly different to get you to North Fork, but get there as soon as possible. Dump most of your stuff there. Just take what you need to go out and ride an extremely pleasant 60 to 70 miles of single track. So take enough fuel to get you through that. Probably most of you can do that without carrying supplementary fuel. I might take the self-rescue kit because there's some scary side hilling out there. But other than that, you can leave most of your stuff at North Fork and just go have fun for a day. So you can ride these trails without doing them on a fully loaded bike. We're going to try to have everything sawed, and you should be ready to rock and roll. Day 6 is absolutely some of my favorite trail anywhere in the world. So I hope that you like it as well. So let me pull up the map here. Coming out of Salmon right away, there's a difference in the 1, 2, and 3-team variations. And the people that are on teams of 2 or 3 are going to head north out of Salmon up towards Carmen to the fairgrounds, and then you go up something called Storm Mountain Road. And you're going to ride up to Wallace Lake. There's a challenge point at a really nice overlook where you're looking down into Wallace Lake. Then you're going to ride down into historic Leesburg. And even though you really want to get to North Fork as quickly as possible, it is a tour of Idaho after all. So it's kind of worth checking out historic Leesburg a little bit. At least look at the interpretive signs. Go up and check out some of the buildings. It's kind of a cool place. And from there, it's just a long drone into North Fork, Idaho. The 2- and 3-person teams take a slightly different route. The 3-person teams, we take you on the slightly longer but infinitely more scenic route. If you're on a 2-team and you have time, the 3-team route's actually kind of cool. But we gave people on teams of 2 a shortcut. Now, soloists don't see any of this. Soloists start out from Salmon, and they go up the way everybody came into Salmon the day before, so you're going to come back down the route that you came up. You're going to go to Wallace Lake, but you're going to take the normal route backward. Then you're going to go down Storm Mountain Road, and you're going to just hit the slab. You're going to take Highway 93 north to North Fork. If you get out of Salmon early in the morning, let's say 6 o'clock would be a good time to be out of Salmon. If you're a soloist, you ought to be in North Fork by no later than 8:30. There's just not that much to prevent you from getting there. So you get to have basically the whole day ahead of you. If you're on a 2 or 3-team route, it's a little longer, maybe a couple of hours. But it's still, by all of you should be in North Fork, I guess my point is, by no later than 11 o'clock. So get there, even if your room's not ready. I'm sure you can make arrangements with the wonderful people at North Fork to drop your stuff off. There are other, by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet this year. We really like the people at North Fork. That's where we prefer you stay. But there are some other alternatives in the area. The Wagon Hammer just down the road is owned by a friend of mine, Jeff, who rides dirt bikes. It's a perfectly good place. You can stay there. And there's a couple places up and down the road. But the people at North Fork we've worked with extensively over the years. They've always treated our riders really well. It's got the most stuff all in one place. There's a nice little restaurant and stuff all right there. And it's pretty central to where you need to be. So that's a good place, but there are other perfectly acceptable alternatives in the same area. At any rate, you're going to get to North Fork, hopefully 10, 11, no later than that. Drop your stuff there, and then you're going to take off. And from North Fork, everybody's going to do the same thing. You're going to head back down the Salmon River Road. Let me pull it up here. And it's 6 or 8 miles, I don't know. And you're going to head up something called Sage Creek. And you're going to go up a long way up Sage Creek Road. And by the way, it is incredibly easy to get lost going up this road. If you just stay on what looks like the main road the whole way, you'll be fine. But I spaced the waypoints pretty widely apart, specifically to encourage you to sit down and look at this on aerial photos and some maps. There are a bazillion logging roads that take off of the main Sage Creek Road everywhere. And the road's not particularly well marked, but it is the main drag. So if every time you're going up, and as long as you're heading up the hill still before you get to Ulysses Mountain, if you just stay on what always looks like the main drag, you're going to be fine. But we've had some teams of people that were incredibly smart, really good navigators, get lost trying to get up Sage Creek. And it's because there's just a maze of logging roads in that area. Stay on the main drag, and do a little bit of map study and aerial photo study in advance, and I think you'll be okay. So your first challenge point of the day is up on something called Ulysses Mountain. It's an out and back. I haven't been up there in a couple years. The last time I was there, I climbed all the way up to the tower, which was unmanned. The door was locked. I couldn't get in. I've heard of some other people that have been able to get in, and I've also heard some reports that it's kind of rickety and people were worried about going up there. When we have a challenge point at a lookout, the expectation is you actually go to the lookout. And if that involves climbing the tower, so be it. But for these ones that are abandoned, like if there's steps and stuff missing and it looks rickety, I don't expect you to do that. But if it's a working tower, we like for you to go up in there and get a photograph with whoever's up in the tower. And generally, they don't have any problem in the world with you doing that. So are you going to get disqualified if you don't climb the tower? No, you are not. But if it looks like it's in good shape and you don't feel too worried about climbing up there, go ahead and do it because it makes a better photo. From there, you're going to head north. You're going to go to a place called Indian Peak. Indian Peak is very cool. The hill climb up there is a little bit steep. There's also sort of a confusing maze of roads up there, but you'll figure that stuff out. The waypoints are where they need to be. Then you're going to head out to Razorback Ridge, or excuse me, Butcher Knife Ridge. I'm sorry. So here's the deal. The Butcher Knife Ridge Trail proper starts really close to waypoint 6DXYZ27. It is incredibly easy to miss the start of that trail. There is a sign there, but the trail itself is inobvious, and the sign, even though it's not really in the trees, it kind of blends into the background. And I've ridden past that sign. I've probably done this trail dozens of times, and I've probably ridden past the trail half the time before I found it, and I know where it is. So when you're coming up on 6D, let's see, what is it? Oh, I told you the wrong thing. It's 6DXYZ 26. I think that's where it starts. It's 25 is where you make the turn to go up the road. Yeah, it's at 6DXYZ 26. When you get close to that waypoint, you see it coming up on the GPS you've got zoomed out probably. Start slowing down and looking off to the right because it's a little easy to miss the beginning of the Butcher Knife Ridge Trail. Once you get on it, it's a wonderful trail. There's a cool story behind it. There was a fire that swept over that ridge, and they brought in some machinery up there to try to cut a fire break, which is why the top of the ridge is bare and it's got blowdown everywhere, dead trees. They were burned in the fire. They actually were unable to stop the fire because they didn't cut a big enough fire line. Fire jumped it, and it actually burned up two really expensive excavators that they had up there. But that's why the whole top of the ridge is bare, and that's why the trail's kind of cool. It's a meadow, basically, that's 7 miles long that you're riding through. Excuse me, a ridgetop meadow. You're going to come up to, let's see, what's it called? Sage Spring and the Continental Divide Trail, and that's at 6DXYZ29. That's where you hit the CDT. And you're going to turn right, which is north on the CDT, right along through there. There's a challenge point up there at... There's a little cross, a little monument and a cross that are built to the rider's right, which would be east as you're riding up there. That's a good place to stop and eat a Kate's Bar and check out the view. It's a spectacular place. Brian DeLinge and I were up there about a year ago clearing some trail, and we were a little bit separated riding through that area, and a lightning bolt actually struck between about 150, 200 feet apart, and the lightning bolt hit right between us. So be careful up there. The storms come rolling up out of the Bitterroots sometime, and you don't see them till the last minute. That's what happened to us. It went from sunshiny to thunderbolts and lightning that looked like Thor having a fist fight within about 5 minutes. It really came up on us fast. And before we had time to get off the ridge, next thing you know, we were engulfed in a thunderstorm. So be careful up there because you're there during the monsoon season at the time of year when afternoon thunderstorms can crop up typically pretty quick. So you're going to ride north and then east along the Continental Divide Trail for a way. And then when you get to, let me see what this is, 6DXYZ looks like 30. It's 6DXYZ30. The trail heads, it's a little bit before that. Yeah, no, that's right, 6DXYZ30. The trail starts to head downhill. It goes off the ridge. It goes down through some meadows. Trail crews in that area last year really did a work on it, so it's a nice trail. It used to be kind of rutted, but now it's a nice trail that goes down through some meadows. They've cut the switchbacks so that there aren't ruts and stuff in them. There's no real steep spots. But you're on something called the Axe Park Trail, and there's two trails there. There's the Axe Park Trail and the Axe Park Cutoff Trail. One of them's moto legal, one of them's not. The one that's indicated in purple on the map is the one that most people accidentally take because it's really difficult to find the beginning of the other trail. It's very obvious where that trail goes. The trail that we have marked, the red trail, the trail you're supposed to be on, is absolutely the better of the two trails. But it's difficult to find. You should not be on the purple trail because it's a non-motorized trail. But that's the one place where I'm not going to ding anybody for making a navigational error there. Should you find waypoint 60XYZ31, why, yes, you should. Yeah, that's the place you're supposed to go. It's the better trail. It's got the better views. You'll enjoy the riding better. It's a little more difficult. There's one pretty high-energy switchback up there. But other than that, that's the way you want to go. But if you get lost and you accidentally go down the regular Axe Park Trail, well, you and about 10,000 other people, because that's the way almost everybody goes. It's easy to get lost. At any rate, if you're doing the challenge section, you better make sure that you find the right route because the challenge section takes off near Allen Mountain. It's Ditch Creek. Now, Ditch Creek, I'm telling you what, that'll keep you on your toes. That's a pretty studly little challenge section through there, and you're going the right way. You're going downhill. I tried to ride up it once last year to clear it in the rain, and it'll give you all you want. If you have the time, it's worth doing. But the normal trail, the normal route, once you get to Axe Park, which is at 6DXYZ34, it's a wonderful trail. It's got these big, wide, sweeping turns. It goes through these big open trees. So instead of they're mature trees, it's a mature canopy. And instead of the trees being, 6 feet apart, they're like 60 feet apart. So there's meadows in them, flowers. It's a really nice place. You're going to ride way down. You're going to come out to a big road parking area. There's a couple of creek crossings that are a little gnarly, but nothing that's going to really affect any of you. You're going to come out to a road. You're going to follow the road downhill to the southeast to waypoint 60XYZ39, and then you're going to turn back up Ditch Creek Road. And these roads all have real confusing markings on them. Just go by the numbers that are in the route description, the written route description, your route book. You're going to go all the way up to 6DXYZ, what is that, 41? And that's where the challenge section comes in if you decided to ride that coming down out of Ditch Creek. Then you're going to go to Granite Mountain Lookout. There's a challenge point there. It's a cool place. You got to walk out to the lookout. The lookout, again, is closed, but you can walk out to it. And I was just there a few months ago, so I know you can get up to it and walk up and take a picture. It's worth doing. And the cool thing about it is the rest of the day, you're occasionally going to get a peek of Granite Mountain Lookout, and it's having been there and stood on the deck makes it kind of cool when you're on all these other places in this big loop that you're going to ride the rest of the day, checking it out. So after Granite Mountain, you're just going to ride some fire roads back down to 93. When you get there, I think it's 6DXYZ46 is what I'm seeing. You're going to hang a left, rider's left, which is north. You're going to head up to Givensville. You're going to peel off 93 at Givensville, and you're going to head towards 6DXYZ48. I know almost everybody that lives in this area. We spend so much time up there clearing trail, we've gotten to know these people quite a bit. They're super nice people. They're typically older retirees. The one thing that you should do is watch your speed when you go through there. They've got like a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit posted, so don't be doing 60 going down the road, cranking off wheelies and stuff like that. These are nice people. They moved there because they kind of like peace and quiet. So if you just sort of noodle through there respectfully, pardon me, you're going to be doing our entire community more of a favor because they'll like you better if you're not making a lot of noise, if you're not going really fast and doing things like that. Well, you're going to head up, and at 6DXYZ49, you're going to hit 3 Mile Trail. It's a really wonderful trail. It's called 3 miles because it's 3 miles long. 3 Mile Creek Trail, I think, actually. There's a gate to keep the side-by-sides and the quads out right at the beginning, which is how you can see it. You're going up the road, and right where the waypoint is, just start looking up, and you'll see a gate, a single-track gate up there. It's kind of a stupid gate, and it's in the wrong place, but it is what it is. So that's how you find the beginning of that trail. Wonderful trail once you get on it. It's going to take you up to a spring at 6DXYZ52, and above that spring, you go through a little bit of gnarl, and you hit the Continental Divide Trail. First couple of miles of the CDT in this area are awesome. You're heading sort of to the northeast, pardon me. Then you turn around, you head to the southeast. But last year, the Salmon Chalice Ranger District got $120,000 to quote unquote improve the Continental Divide Trail in this area. And even though it's a multiple use trail, what they decided to do was basically go in and ruin it for people that ride motorcycles, for people who bring in pack trains. I guess they had hikers on the story is they had hikers on the Continental Divide Trail who somehow or the other, despite having hiked all the way from Mexico to Salmon, Idaho, were concerned about the amount of up and down on the Continental Divide Trail from Salmon up north to the pass with Montana. I don't believe that story either. But anyway, they sent a wilderness crew in to make quote-unquote improvements on a multiple-use trail, and now the trail is completely knackered. It's horrible for everybody. So from about 60 XYZ 54 to 55, you might not enjoy it that much. They really took what was a good trail and they screwed a lot of it up. They put switchbacks in that are difficult to ride around. I've gone up and I've ridden the old trail many times. The old trail was in every way better than the new trail, but that's an issue. By the way, not everybody in those agencies agrees with stuff like that. We have friends in the agency that are trying to fix these things for us. But as much as I really enjoy working with some people in those agencies, there is nonetheless, if I'm being totally honest, there's a cadre of hardcore people in those agencies that hate everything that's got a motor on it. They don't even really like mountain bikes that much. They think it should be hikers and horses and stuff like that and nobody else. And when you put those kind of people in charge of a project like this, what comes out is what this trail is between 60 XYZ 54 and 55, or at least large chunks of it. So after that, you're going to end up at Big Hole Pass, 60 XYZ 56 in that area. The cool thing about this area is that there's some history involved. There's some interpretive markers there that you should stop to read. There used to be one of my favorite single track trails in the entire tour, started really close to 60 XYZ 56. Just a little beyond that. That is now gone. It was between 56 and 57. They just decided to make it non-motorized last year. Now, there's a big hubbub about that, and I think that decision will eventually be reversed, but we don't get to use that trail anymore. So instead, this year, what we're going to do is we're going to take you to the top of Morgan Mountain, 60 XYZ 59. You're going to come down the hill, and we're going to take you up a brand new trail. This is the one that Brian, Mike, and I, and some friends of ours in the agencies up there have been working on. And it's called Powder Gulch, and it starts at 60 XYZ 60, if I'm not mistaken. That's exactly it. And it goes from Lick Creek south over the mountains to Sheep Creek. Now, soloists don't have to ride this trail. You can go out and hit the road if you want to, but if I were a soloist and I was making good time, I might consider doing this trail. It slows you down a little bit, but it's not an incredibly high-effort trail as long as it's not wet. If it's wet, there's some spots that are a little steep and slick that might be high effort for you, but we're trying to fix all that stuff. It's a wonderful trail. But again, soloists are not required to do it. Everybody else is. So if you're a soloist and it's early in the day, I might consider upgrading and doing that. That's going to take you over to Sheep Creek, and you are going to ride the Sheep Creek Trail around Eagle Mountain, which is high above Sheep Creek, and many people have described the side hilling in that area as scintillating. It's a good trail, but it's a hell of a drop off to, it'll be the rider's right. In fact, the photograph, which is on the event invite for this particular PBR Monday, was taken off of my handlebars as I was riding across one of the less exposed parts of the Sheep Creek side hill. From there, you're going to go on over and you're going to hit the CDT again. And you're going to ride around below Pyramid Peak. Then you pop out, come up on some Jeep roads, and that's going to take you to the top of Steen Mountain. Big lookout there. It's a man lookout. It's really nice. Then you're going to ride one of my favorite trails in Idaho. I've said that, I know, all day long about these trails, but they really are wonderful trails. The trail down off of Steen Mountain is an extremely improbable trail. If you're riding up it, which we used to have everybody do, it's 1,000 feet a mile for almost 3 miles. It's a steep sucker, but you're going to be riding down it. We figure that's the way to mitigate some trail damage. Even though it's on fairly good trail tread, if a lot of people ride up, it eventually gets eaten up. We're basically the only people that ever do this. And also, that trail closes early. From the top of Steen Mountain on, if you get there after, I think it's September 9th this year, those trails are closed. So you're going to have to take the alternative routes around. You're going to have to pick up the points that you lose a different way. But anyway, you're going to ride down that trail. It's a wonderful trail. Takes you into Steen Gulch, pops you back out in Sheep Creek, and from there you're going to ride the slab back to North Fork. Last couple of years, most parties were getting into North Fork at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. So it's another fairly easy day. So day 5 should have been fairly short for you to get you into Salmon early enough to get some things done, hopefully get your tires changed, reprovision yourself. Salmon's a big place. You can get a lot of stuff there. Biggest town on the tour, except for Pocatello. North Fork, they carry a lot of stuff at North Fork. So they have some supplies there. I work with them pretty carefully about things that you should carry for motorcyclists. Please don't do something stupid when you're in these cool places like North Fork. Like, go in your room and change your oil. We had a guy that did that a few years ago. He changed his oil in his room, dirtied up all of the stuff that they had in the room, like the sheets and stuff, and then left everything there. Left like a dirty filter laying in the bathroom sink. If you do things like that, I'll DQ you in a heartbeat. I'll DQ you just on general principles. You can think I'm any kind of an asshole you want, but if you go do something that's that stupid to basically abuse the good graces of our hosts by trashing one of their rooms, you're not my friend anymore. I don't want to know who you are. I'm not going to mention the guy's name that did it publicly, but if you want to know privately, PM me and I'll tell you who it was. This guy was a dick. And there's no excuse for doing anything like that other than you're a prick. There's no amount of, I don't understand that I'm doing a bad thing here, that explains changing your motorcycle oil in your hotel room and leaving a dirty filter in the sink. It's a disgrace. So please don't do that. There are some people there that have done things like, done some work out in the parking lot. And as long as you clean yourself up and, you don't make an annoyance of yourself to your neighbors, there's not a problem with that. But bear in mind that motorcycles are an anomaly in some of these places. Like at the village at North Fork, most of those people there are hikers and campers, and they're out fishing and doing things like that. So when you roll in, if you're sitting there revving your motor at 10 o'clock at night or at 4 in the morning, or you got dirty crap all over the place, you're making our entire community not look as good as it could. So just bear in mind that you are a little on the outskirts of their normal population there, and try to be cool. Be nice to people. They'll be nice to you too. Everybody really loves that place. The people there are great hosts. So that gets you into day 7. Now, in day 7, we start getting, again, into some really, really long days. And one of the reasons that we made day 1 as long as we did a couple years ago is at the suggestion of Jimmy and some other tour vets who Jimmy kept telling me, you ought to insist that everybody do the challenge section on day 1, because it then makes day 1 as hard as some days that are much deeper into the tour, where your opportunity to get help if you need it is way less than it is early in the tour. And I agree with all that except for one thing. Jimmy's such a tremendous rider that the difficulty of the challenge section doesn't mean anything to him. And the day 1 challenge section is difficult enough that it would stop a lot of riders who I think could actually finish the tour dead in their tracks. We've had strong riders that have had to get IVs after day 1 from riding the challenge section. So what we did on day 1 was try to put in trails that just made it longer and longer, but didn't necessarily make it so difficult that it would be just the technical difficulty that would weed somebody out. It would just be the length, the planning, and the endurance. So by the time you get to day 7 now, if you made it through day 1 and you were okay, you got into to the flagpole before midnight, you have a reasonable assumption of being able to get through day 7, day 8, and day 9, all of which are very long days. So on day 7, let me take a look at there's not that much single track on day 7 after you leave the Continental Divide Trail. Yeah, North Fork to Lowell, it's 255 miles all the way to Lowell. There's Henderson Ridge Trail, Divide Trail, the challenge section, which we'll talk about in a minute, Marlin Spring, if you do that. There's the 505 and the Anderson Butte Trail, which are closer to Elk City. Those are both ATV trails, but they're cool ATV trails. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So you're going to leave North Fork, you're going to go down the road, and you're going to keep on going down the Salmon River Road to a place called, let me pull it up here. I think it's Indian Creek that you go up. What is that? Yeah. Or Spring Creek. No, Spring Creek is farther down. Let's see here. Yeah, Squaw Creek, excuse me. So, you're going to get off and you're going to go up the Squaw Creek Road. And about a mile up the Squaw Creek Road near, well, actually, I'm wrong. No, I'm looking at challenge section again. I'm sorry. You're going to go down and you're going to go up, what is that? Indian Creek. Thank you. So you're going to go down to 7DXYZ1, and that is Indian Creek. And you're going to head up Indian Creek, a long ways up Indian Creek, in fact, and right at way up at the top near something called Corral Creek, there's a creek crossing which kind of looks improbable. Now, Brian Lynch, Brian Horton, and I went up last year. We cleared all that stuff out and brushed it, so it looks less improbable now than it used to. But there's a creek crossing there, and before, it looked like the trail just dead-ended. Now you can see a trail on the other side, and when you get into it, depending on how well it's been brushed this year, it goes through some willows and stuff, and it can be a little bit difficult to find, but there is a trail there on the right bank of Indian Creek. And you're going to ride up that trail for a way. It's in the creek for a little ways, and that part's a little inconvenient. There's about maybe a 50-yard section where it actually goes down into the creek. And when you get there, I would advise you to maybe consider getting off and pushing, because there's some holes in that creek that are more than airbox deep. And if you find one, you're going to spend a lot of time down in there, drying your bike out. So be a little bit careful in there. But anyway, you're going to ride up. You cross the creek a few times. You cross a couple of creeks that come in from the side a few times. You're going to end up at 7DXYZ4. Then all of a sudden it turns into this really nice trail again. And it's kind of an old Jeep road kind of a thing. It switchbacks up the hill, and you're going to get up on something called Henderson Ridge. That's a trail that we cut out last year, brushed it, cleared it. It's well marked, and it's easy to follow now. And that's going to take you all the way up to the Continental Divide Trail. It's a nice trail. I think you'll mostly enjoy it. You're going to get on the CDT. You're going to turn left, rider's left, which is west. Soloists get off near 7DXYZ8. There's a little bit of a side hill that you go up that might scintillate some people. And right at the top of that, there's a place called Irishman's Rock. And there's a road that comes in. Where you cross that road, the soloists are going to head straight downhill into Montana. Everybody else is going to head out to the west and then to the south. Past a place called Saddle Springs, and you get out between 7DXYZ, or excuse me, 7DYZ2 and YZ3 is the challenge section for the day, which is Marlin Spring. Marlin Spring is one that we like to be sort of deliberately vague on, and you can take that as a play on words if you wish. I've done it. Brian DeLinge has done it. A few other people in our community have done it. All I'm going to say is looks good in the beginning, but it is this trail is a living, breathing reminder of the aphorism, riding down things that you don't know anything about may not be the best idea in the world. And I'm just going to leave it there. Should you decide to do this challenge section, you better have your big boy and your big girl britches on, because there's some stuff out there that's going to challenge you. It is a heck of a lot of work. It is not the challenge section that I would choose were I doing the tour, or one of them I would choose, depending on the size of my team. However, every year we get, not typically from our community, because the people in our community who have actually all done the tour, they understand that you didn't need to do anything to make it harder. But as most of you are aware, if you look around on the interwebs about this, I'm full of shit and don't know what I'm talking about, and it's actually an easy thing for old duffers. This is for those people. So for the people that are the universe's gift to our sport of motorcycling, we included this part on the Tour of Idaho just for them. It's kind of my gift to them personally. So for everybody else, you're just going to ride on out to Blue Nose Lookout, challenge point out there, ride out to Horse Creek. Then you're going to head down. You're not on the Continental Divide there, but you're going to head down off the divide into Montana. And once you get into Montana, all the routes hook up at a place called Alta. You're going to ride a little bit north from Alta, 7D XYZ 10, which is on a paved road, and you're going to turn left there off the road, head back over your shoulder a little bit to the left, down something called Coal Creek. And again, this is another place where there's some private property there, and you're actually riding through private property on a public right-of-way. There's a resort there. Be cool. Don't be revving your bike and doing wheelies going down the road and stuff like that. Be respectful, because we want to be good neighbors to all the folks on the tour. At one point, I had talked to the people in that resort, and we thought about maybe making that an emergency stop, and they were open to the idea that they could have food, fuel, some things like that for people. It never really went very far, but I might go back and talk to those folks again. And it's difficult for me to do that if, for some reason, we've offended them. So be nice to the folks there. It's a little difficult to find your way around the maze of logging roads, but the waypoints are where they need to be. And if you get lost, you're going to end up, all those roads sort of weave in and out of each other. So from 70 XYZ 11 all the way to 15, if you do get lost, you won't be lost for long, because typically things hook back up. Again, that's an area where if you have studied the aerial photographs and the satellite photographs, you'll be a lot better off when you get there. You're going to know what to do at every intersection. You're going to ride down into Painted Rocks Lake near 6D XYZ 16. You can see the thing as you're contouring around the hillside. Then you're going to head up and over towards the Magruder. And again, it's a really confusing maze of logging roads as you go from 7D XYZ 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, all the way up to 22. There's a lot of roads that keep going across there. Lots of intersections. Just stay on what looks like the main drag. Again, your map study and your satellite photo study will have aided you a lot in this area, and the waypoints are where they need to be. Typically, there's a lot of switchbacks in there, so I can't say if you're heading towards the next waypoint you're always doing the right thing, because you're on these switchbacks and you might actually be on the right route but temporarily headed away from it. But it's not that hard to navigate your way through there, and if you get lost, it won't be for long. Once you hit 70 XYZ 24, you're in the Nez Perce corridor, and you are getting ready to start across the Magruder Road. So you're going to ride up to a pass, Nez Perce Pass. There is a challenge point up there, if I'm not mistaken. You're back in Idaho at that point, so you've taken a brief little sojourn into Montana. You're back in Idaho at this point, and unless you fall off the right side of your bike, you're going to be in Idaho for the rest of the tour. There's a couple places where you're on the border once again. The road, it's interesting. The road is paved as you go up over Nez Perce Pass. It's paved for about 4 or 5 miles on either side of the pass. Then it turns into a dirt road again once you drop down into the wilderness area. So you're in one of the largest wilderness. I think it is the largest wilderness area in the lower 48 states, the Frank Church Wilderness. And there's a motorized corridor that goes through it, which is what you're on. And it's called the Magruder Road. The adventure rider guys just they wax rhapsodic about this road. It's okay. It's got some scenic views and stuff, but it's just a big dirt road that goes through the middle of nowhere. And because it's a wilderness area and you're not allowed to use any kind of mechanized device to fight a fire or even do things to prevent fires, like you can't use chainsaws back in there. Everything's got to be a cross-cut saw. You can't use anything mechanical. You can't use things with wheels. So the fires just burn in that area. When you get in there, you're going to be disappointed because mostly it looks like a big burned out place, which is what it is. As you go across through here, you're going to get up to a place. There's a fork in the road. It's 7D XYZ 28. You're going to head up the hill. towards 70 XYZ 29. From 28 to 29, you're going to go up through a series of switchbacks. And in that area, this might be one of the most dangerous places along the entire tour of Idaho because the road is really narrow. It's kind of fast. There's a lot of blind curves in it. And I actually prefer riding this at night whenever I can because I can see the headlights of the cars coming down through the trees in plenty of time for me to be able to anticipate that there's going to be somebody coming around this corner. But it's a one-lane road. It's pretty well maintained, so people drive it kind of fast. And I've nearly ended up as a hood ornament here a few times. So be really careful as you're moving from XYZ 28 to 29. Above that, the road starts to straighten out a little bit. The vision's better, and you won't have as much of a problem. That takes you up to, let's see, 30, and there's a lookout up there that you can walk out to if you want to. 70 XYZ 30. You don't have to walk out there. That's a bonus point. One team did it last year. It's kind of a cool walk, but it's 3/4 of a mile. So, I mean, it's a little ways up there, especially if you didn't bring along a set of lightweight running shoes. Walking up back in your motocross boots or your bathroom slippers, you're not going to like very much. But it's cool if you want to pick up an extra point without too much work. From there, you're going to ride generally west through the Frank Church. You're going to ride up to a place called Burnt Knob. There's a lookout up there, challenge point in that lookout that you do have to have. Everybody's got to go there. You're going to head down into Poet Creek, great big long downhill, about 6 miles into Poet Creek. Then once again, you're on this road from Poet Creek, which is 70 XYZ 36, all the way over to XYZ 37, 38 in Mountain Meadows. That's another super dangerous section of the tour. It's a wide gravel road. It's not a Jeep trail anymore. It's a wide gravel road, big enough for heavy equipment to go down. But it's got a ton of curves in it. Vision's not good. There's a lot of elevation change, a lot of curves in it. So, and it's heavily forested on either side. So all of that leads up to poor vision down the road, and the trees do a pretty good job of absorbing sound. And there has not been one time in daylight that I have gone down that road when I haven't come around a corner and found myself face to face with either somebody in a Jeep doing a full four-wheel drift right in my part of the road. This is a 2-lane road too, but they'll still be in your side of the road. Or a whole bunch of yahoos, like 7 people riding on a single quad, all drinking beers, about to run me down. So you got to be really careful going down this section of road. Just check your speed. Make sure you sort of tiptoe around the corners a little bit so you don't end up as a hood ornament on somebody's ATV or Jeep. Go to Mountain Meadows. You're going to get off and ride the quad trail out past Soda Point. It's a beautiful trail. The quad trails in this area are maintained by the Elk City Dust Devils ATV Club, and I want to give those people a shout. They do a superb job of maintaining these trails. They're super nice people. These trails are great trails. They keep them in good shape, so it's not your average nasty, torn-up quad trails. These trails are really entertaining trails to ride, and they've routed them through some really good places. You'll notice there's a whole bunch of waypoints once you get to the north up there, north of Soda Creek Point, and it's because it's really tough to find your way down off the mountain there. There is a trail there, but it's overgrown a lot. So I put a lot of waypoints in there to basically get you from one switchback to the next to make it a little easier for you to find. You're going to come down, you're going to hit a road. It's 70 XYZ 49. You hit a really nice big road. It's the Red River Hot Springs Road. If you turn right there and go less than a mile, you're going to end up at Red River Hot Springs. And they don't have any gas for sale there, but I'm sure in an emergency they probably do have a little bit of fuel there. But they've got soft drinks. They've got a little bit of food to eat. It's a really nice little resort kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But whether you go there or not. I would be trying to get myself to Elk City as quickly as I could. At 70 XYZ 49, you're going to turn to the rider's left, and you're going to go southwest down the road to XYZ 51. You're going to go up from there a series of dirt roads up past the Alberta mine, and you're going to hit some quad trails up around 70 XYZ 54. I think it's the 505 trail, maybe the 555 trail, and you're heading up north towards Anderson Mountain. Now, here's the problem you're going to run into. There is no gas at Lowell anymore, where you're supposed to spend the night. So you have to get gas in Elk City. I don't care if you stay in Elk City. If you want to end your day in Elk City and stay there, that's fine. It makes your next day really long if you do that. But Elk City's got a nice place. They've got a hardware store there. It's got a lot more stuff than Lowell does. Lowell just gets you farther along the way for your day 8. So if you want to stay in Elk City instead of staying in Lowell, that's fine with me. Nobody's going to ding you a point or anything on that. But you are going to have to go into Elk City either way to get fuel, which is why there's that what looks like kind of a side trip into Elk City. It's necessary because that's what you have to do to get fuel. So you go into Elk City, you come back out of Elk City, get back on those quad trails, head north past Anderson Butte, a little bit north of Anderson Butte. I think it's around 7D XYZ 81. There's a very inobvious turn to the right. In that area, if you find yourself moving away from a waypoint, you're getting ready to make a mistake. You're going to take a trail down the hill, and it's not where you want to go. So again, real close to 7D XYZ 82, be looking for a trail that goes off to the rider's right, which is north. That's the way that you actually want to go. And that takes you north many, many, many miles. It's an ATV trail, but it's a good ATV trail. Up to a road. You're going to come out on a Jeep trail, and that actually it's better than a Jeep trail. It's an improved gravel road. And you're going to ride that north up to Horse Creek Point. Now, the last few years, this road, which starts at 7D XYZ 89 and goes down to 7D XYZ 94, has had construction going on. There's been logging operations going on in there. If you get to the top of the road and there's a sign that says road closed, don't take it. You're perfectly free then to take the alternative route that's in purple. And it's, let's see, starts at 7DC0. You can take that alternative route around and take any of the alternatives into Lowell if there's any kind of a sign up there that says the road is closed. The problem with all those is that they're longer, so you end up using some of your fuel. But the shortest route is not that much longer. It's maybe 5 miles longer than the route I take you down. So don't hesitate to not go down from Horse Creek Point down into the river, the Selway River, if you don't have to. You can take the alternatives around. That's just fine if the road is closed. If the road's open, though, it's incredibly cool because you come down off this thing called Falls Point, and it is a steep rascal down into the river bottom. And then once you get into the river bottom, you're in the Selway River corridor, and it's a really nice sort of a combination of a gravel and a paved road that takes you out to Lowell. Now, again, I don't care how you get from Elk City to Lowell. Fires are frequent in that area. Road closures are frequent in that area. You are expected to stay on the route that we have, the main route, the red route. But if there's a sign there that says closed or there's a fire, we mapped out all those alternatives specifically so you wouldn't have to do it. So if there's a problem with the regular route, please feel free to take the alternatives. Don't worry that you're going to get disqualified or something like that. Last 2 or 3 years, that's been more common than not that people have had to take one of those alternatives. There was a guy a few years ago, a tour vet. He's done the whole tour once, and I think he's done sections of it a bunch of times. A guy named Steve Taylor that actually ended up having to ride from Elk City all the way around to Kuska. Had to ride way out on some paved roads to go around. So that's a problematic area. We all know that. So if something comes up, just tell us what happened, and then you'll be fine taking any of the alternatives. So Lowell, Idaho. No gas at Lowell. Used to be gas in a couple of resorts. Now it is a single hotel, restaurant, and that's it. There's no fuel or anything there. You're going to have to make do with whatever you can get in the little restaurant there. So our suggestion is that you load up on as much gas as you can carry out of Elk City. The route from Elk City to Lowell, by any of those variations, is a simple route. You're not going to have any trouble with it. So you want to load up everything that you have that will carry fuel. Load up both of your GL fuel bags. You might even consider buying like a 1.5 gallon fuel jug at the hardware store there in Elk City and throwing it over your shoulder bandolier style, or figuring out a way to strap it to your front fender or something, because you're not going to need to carry a lot of fuel. It's a long way, because from Lowell to Laksha Lodge is a long day all by itself. When you tack on that extra 50 to 75 miles that it takes to get there, you're really talking about a lot. Now, there is another alternative. There is no gas in Lowell, but if you want to ride 20 miles down the road to Kooskia to get gas, you can do that. There's also, Kooskia is a big place. There's places there to stay. There's better places to eat. I don't care if you stay in Kooskia either. If you want to stay in Kooskia instead of Lowell and you want to get your gas there, that's fine with me. We're a little looser in this area just because those are small places and sometimes they're not open, sometimes they're not in business. So you let me know what you needed to do there. If you get there and it's other than I have described, we'll help you. We'll work with you on making whatever adaptation you need. I think as long as you go to Elk City this year, get your gas, you go to Lowell, the little hotel restaurant there is going to be open. I think that's the best way to do it, but I'm open to alternatives if something comes up. So that gets you into the next day, day 8. Now, I don't have very much time left here to do this tonight, so I'm going to go. I don't know if I'll get all the way through this or not, but let's just talk about this day 8. Day 8 is the real deal. It combines some of the length of day 7 and technical difficulty of day 1 with incredible remoteness. On some of these trails that you're going to be on day 8, it's a little bit like some of that stuff coming out of Chalice in that the only other person that's going to find you is somebody doing the Tour of Idaho. So if you get knackered on some of this day 8, day 9 stuff, you could be in a passel of trouble. So that's one of the reasons that we require everybody to have a personal locator beacon, because if we see your beacon is not moving, then somebody is going to be coming for help. By the way, we had an episode a few years ago where a beacon didn't move for 20 hours. And we were starting to get really worried. And it turned out that the guy had dropped his beacon. There's no cell phone coverage anywhere in that area, so we didn't know until he rolled into Wallace the next day and posted up on the internet there that he was fine and that he'd lost his beacon. But we saw a beacon stay in the same spot for 20 hours, and that caused a little worry and consternation among the touricals. So once you leave Lowell, right out of Lowell, the route changes a little bit depending upon whether you are on whether you're a soloist or on a 2 to 3 person team, and it's in this Pete King Creek. The solo route goes up the quad trail out of Pete King Creek, and it's not too hard. The 2 and 3 person route, there's a little bit of gnarl in that Pete King Creek trail. It's easy for most of the way. It's a little difficult to find because it needs brushing. And again, that's a year-to-year thing. The last time I was there, it was difficult to find. It may be great this year. But there's a really steep climb out of the top of that creek that will keep you on your toes a little bit. Both of the routes join up, and you're going to head up the hill to a lookout. And that lookout is at 8DXYZ 6, it looks like. There's a lookout up there. It's a working lookout. You can walk up in it, and you should walk up in it. The people there that man the lookout are always extremely pleasant to talk to. You can get a selfie with them. I think they kind of get a kick out of it. From there, you go north to Mex Mountain, and you are going to start heading then almost due east out to Frenchman Butte, Middle Butte, and out to something called Fish Creek Butte. There is a challenge point at the top of Fish Creek Butte. Then you come back down and you're going to do Fish Creek Trail. Fish Creek Trail is an interesting trail in that there are certainly some side hills that you have already ridden that have greater exposure, but there are very few side hills that you've ridden so far that have greater consequences. My mountaineering days, one thing that I used to talk about a lot in the books that I wrote about climbing was how important it is to be able to discern between danger that is very real and danger which may feel real but is actually more of an illusion. And this Fish Creek Trail kind of fits into that discussion pretty well. When you're up looking at some of the side hill exposure on some of the day 4, 5, and 6 stuff, it looks fierce. It looks like it is a long freaking way down off the side of that trail. But the fact of the matter is, it might inconvenience you. You know, you might have a hard time getting your motorcycle back up in a couple of spots, but you're not going to die. Some of this Fish Butte stuff, when you're going along some of those slabby granite side hills, if you look down that, it's on solid granite, and it just continues to get steeper and steeper the farther down you get. So it doesn't look incredibly steep right where you're at, but as you continue to go down that, it's going to get steeper. So the effect of that is, if you fall, you're on granite slabs, right? So it's not like your pegs are going to dig into dirt or hang up on a tree root. And you get to going, you may not stop. And it's a long, long way down off there. Now, would you die? I don't know. But I can guarantee you would not enjoy the ride that you're about to take. It'd be a hell of a ride. And I think that the only way to get your bike out would be via helicopter. So you're going to want to exercise the appropriate amount of caution on this Fish Butte trail. That's going to take you down to Highway 12. And at Highway 12, you get to make a decision. For those of you who want to do the challenge section, you start right there. And the challenge section, I think, is, it's the Sherman Creek Trail. Now, Sherman Creek, I'm telling you what, that's a big person trail right there. So you better have your man or your woman jammies on if you're going to ride up that. In most places, it's the normal kind of trail for that area. It's got a lot of side hill exposure. It's kind of a narrow trail, but there's a couple of spots on that trail that are genuine Erzberg for 35 or 40 feet. So there's a couple of places where it goes from just sort of the normal side hill terror that you get in places like that to all of a sudden extremely technical riding with some side hill exposure. But it does save you about 50 miles. So if you have the ability to ride that challenge section, if you feel pretty good about the technical stuff that you've seen so far, and you feel like riding up that, it sure does save you a lot of time and a lot of miles on what's a long day. For everybody else, you're going to ride up Fish Creek, which is some junior side hill exposure. Soloists then get to ride back up to Fish Butte and back out the way you came in. And the reason we send soloists that way is the normal 2 and 3 team variation from XD, YZ6 up to YZ7 and 8 goes up something called Ant Hill. And Ant Hill is notorious. There's some switchbacks in there that are just rutted as all get out. They're steep as hell. And for a soloist to get their bike up those switchbacks, you can do it. I've done it. Other people have done it. But it absolutely would drain every ounce of energy out of your body. And if the weather's really hot or it's raining or something like that, you're just completely screwed when you get there. It is easier if you are a soloist at that point to walk to the top, deploy your self-rescue kit, and just winch your bike up past the switchbacks than it is to try to ride or yank it up. Now, again, that's the way it's been the last few years. This year, we might get there. I'll ask Brian for a trail report on that, but you might get there this year, and it's buffed to immaculateness. So who knows what's going to go on. Now, I'm going to end it right there right now. So we'll pick up next week right here, and we'll continue day 8, and we'll do day 9 and day 10. Then I'll go back and talk about the challenge section. So I hope you all are enjoying your Memorial Day weekend holiday. Remember what the holiday's for. Show some respect for veterans, and get excited because it's not that much longer before we'll all be out there on the tour. So see you next week. Ciao.